be more inclined to act, one would hope, one would think.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for those answers, and I'll yield my time.
Thanks, Senator Dorn. Senator John Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I rise in support of LB 283, and I was originally in support of it for the medical reasons that Senator Breezy articulated, and he handed out the articles here, which I haven't had a chance to read about the economic impact, so I'm interested in that as well. But ultimately, yeah, I agree with, I think, what pretty much everyone's saying here is that the key is consistency, and that daylight saving time or the change, I think, has outlived its usefulness. And so I appreciate Senator Breezy bringing this bill, and I appreciate the attempt to make sure that we harmonize our, I guess, laws with other states as we go forward. To Senator Erdman's comments, I don't know, he's around here somewhere. Oh, there he is. I don't necessarily disagree with you about both of your suggestions of picking standard time and mountain time. I think the key is consistency. I think that, and that's the reason I support Senator Breezy's bill. And I think that having a question about which consistent thing to undertake is important. But as Senator Breezy pointed out, we only have one option at this point in time. So he's advancing this legislation to get us in a position where we could make a choice between the two. So like I said, I think that the key here is eliminating the time change. As I actually was sitting here, I was trying to read the articles, and I thought, oh, I need to change my watch. Looking at the clock right now, 10:33 on the wall, and my watch still says 9:33. So I'll take my time off the mic to try and figure out how to change my watch, which I have to do twice a year, and it becomes a hassle because my watch will stay wrong for several days, if not longer, and then I'm become late or early or off for events. But the big problem for me, being a person with young kids, I took my two oldest kids to school this morning, and it was hard getting all the kids up, getting them ready. And it was dark this morning, where it had been previously not dark when getting ready, which I understand that this bill would put us in that position where it'd be dark in the morning some other times. But the key, I think, is, again, that my kids are adjusting to that time change, and it makes it problematic to actually interact and live in your life. So I think this is a good bill. I know it's unusual for me to stand up in favor of Senator Breezy's bills, but I wanted to make sure, give credit where credit is due, and some where we agree with each other and things. That is important. And I do appreciate, and I will read these articles, Senator Breezy, about the economic impact, positive economic impact of changing the time or sticking with the no time change. And so I will be a green vote on LB 283. I would certainly suggest others, including Senator Erdman. I think he should still vote for it, even though he has a different proposition. But I will yield the remainder of my time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Friesen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in full support of LB 283. Some of us takes about 48 hours to acclimate to the time change, and we're good. Others take 2 weeks, and it makes life difficult for the rest of us. So I'm in support of just picking a time and let's leave it. And I just have one question for Senator Breezy, if he would yield to a question.
Senator Breezy, would you yield, please?
Yes.
Senator Breezy, in the bill, does it anywheres in there guarantee us 12 hours of daylight?
No, I'm sorry, it doesn't, Senator.
Do we need an amendment to fix that?
You can try anything you want.
Thank you, Senator Breezy. Okay, from, in discussions past, I know people have blamed daylight savings time on farmers and numerous other reasons, but let me assure you that I don't care what time the sun comes up or what time it goes down. I think we still find hours in the day, and tractors these days have really good lights on them. So it doesn't matter to us. We don't care. So my main goal is to just see that we don't change the time twice a year. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Friesen. Mr. Clerk, for an announcement.
Mr. President, the Judiciary Committee will meet now in executive session on the North Balcony Judiciary immediately.
Thank you. Senator Erdman.
Mr. President, I thought about this for several minutes, Senator Kavanaugh, John Kavanaugh, and in the spirit of cooperation and trying to get along and be negotiable, I had drafted an amendment, and I showed it to Brandon. He thought it was a great idea, but I haven't introduced it yet. It's the following. I want to split the difference. Instead of going to daylight savings time once a year and then back, is we'll go 30 minutes. We'll adjust our clock 30 minutes, and then that way everybody can be happy, because this may be the first time that I have stood up here and offered an amendment that would be collegial or amendable. So 30 minutes, I think that would be appropriate. Then the sun would still come up in Lincoln before 8 o'clock. And everybody should be happy, because even those people that wanted to stay on mountain time don't get everything they want. And those people that want to stay on daylight savings time didn't get everything, but everybody got something. And I think that's how this is supposed to work here. And so I would assume that 3 other states around us, Senator Breezy, must go to 30 minutes as well. And so that'd be an opportunity for us to lead the way. And then people will say, well, you are the only state that is 30 minutes off. And then I would say, we are the only state that has a unicameral. So we can dare to be different. And so I think 30 minutes, I didn't drop the amendment. I may, but it looks like there's only one person between the vote and me. So whatever I'm saying here is just stalling the vote to get the inevitable. Probably, there's probably 47 of us here, so it'll be 46 to 1. But anyway, that was my thoughts. I thought 30 minutes would be a good starter. Maybe we can get some comments about just going 30 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Erdman. Senator McAllister. Senator McAllister, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I traveled to Washington, D.C. this weekend, and so the time changes is a relevant topic for me. This bill was heard in front of the Government Committee, and I thought the way Senator Breezy put the proposition was the way to go. That if the entire country made a change, that Nebraska could as well. And I think the legislation that he offered is exactly the right way to go. I wouldn't know how to proceed if Nebraska unilaterally changed the time distance. I think there's one other state in the country that does that, and flying on an airplane and having one state that's an outlier is just a bad idea. So I congratulate Senator Breezy, and I think we need to do a more thoughtful approach and not move unilaterally on any kind of time change in the state of Nebraska. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator McAllister. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Good morning, colleagues. I was originally really in support of LB 283, but I know it's right. You're right, Senator Erdman. At like 8 a.m., it being dark out is going to be excruciating to get my children to school. So I'm kind of on the fence, but leaning towards voting for it. I know that there's some concerns about youth sports as well, but it depends on what time we go with. We don't have to go with standard time or daylight savings time. So it really is dependent upon which time we go with as to whether or not we're going to have dark mornings or late sunshine or early dark nights. So I stand sort of in the middle at this point in time. I did want to mention, because I've had a few people come up and ask me about the agenda and that there's the bills on consent. I did last week put amendments on all of the bills on consent. I did this prior to floor debate on Friday, or at least I started it prior to floor debate on Friday. So it has nothing to do with anything like that. It is about taking time. It is about taking time. Consent bills each take 15 minutes. And so with 20 consent bills scheduled ahead of all of our priority bills, that is 5 hours. So it will take 5 hours to get through the consent today. And that's the only reason. I put them on everyone's bills. There's nobody that, I didn't look at who the introducer was or anything. So I'll take all 15 minutes, all 20 times, but unless other people want to speak, that's fine as well. I won't be offended if you don't want to hear me speak, but I intend to speak for 5 hours on these. So thank you.
Thanks, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Clements.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have been here when this bill came up before and I opposed it. I was just looking up the time when the sun rises in Lincoln, Nebraska on December 21, which is the winter solstice. That time is 7:46 a.m. And on standard time, if we switch to daylight savings time on December 21, it will be sunrise at 8:46 a.m. And my concern was children going to school in the dark when they're, almost all of them are going to be starting before 8:46 a.m. And I had, that would be my concern, but I was interested to hear some of the medical reasons. But would Senator Breezy yield to a question?
Senator Brazier, yield, please.
Yes.
If we do vote for this bill today, is it still prohibited to make the change by federal statutes?
Yes. Yes. Congress will have to act.
And regarding that, is marijuana a controlled substance and illegal federally?
Oh, I'd have to think about that. Go ahead. You know the answer to it.
Well, I think it is,
Okay.
but I think there's states that are enacting laws to legalize marijuana when federally it's still not allowed. And so really, does it matter if the federal government prohibits daylight savings time? And couldn't we just say that we're going to do it anyway?
I would be very skeptical of that maneuver. I wouldn't advocate for that. I would want to wait for the feds personally. Because again, you want some other states to take this step with you. You don't want to be an island here. And that's why we have it. So 3 adjoining states would adopt it also. And then when we get federal approval, those other adjoining states presumably would also adopt it. So we would be fairly consistent with our neighbors. Going without federal approval, I would predict you wouldn't get other states to go with you on that endeavor.
Well, thank you. And I believe that leaving marijuana as a controlled substance illegal federally is a good thing to have the state follow as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Clements. Senator Urban, your third opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. So it was just brought to my attention that there is a place that doesn't stay on the rest of the time, like time the rest of us do. Nepal is off 15 minutes. So we wouldn't be the only place in the world that's off a little bit. And some of our neighbors think we're off quite a bit on a lot of things, but that's the way it goes. But I think Senator Clements brought out a very good point about when the sun's going to come up. And we don't take that into consideration a lot of times. And I would think that most of you in this room have in the past several weeks either thought about or made the comment about how light it is earlier, how the time is, the light is getting earlier every day. And I noticed that. And I am sure that if we were making this decision the 1st of January when it was dark at 7:45, we may have a different opinion about daylight savings time than we do today. And I heard Senator Breezy said something about the sunset. And I think that happens once a day. I think, towards evening, the sun sets. Those are about the only things we can really count on, the sun coming up and the sun going down. But there's a lot to be said for leaving it in standard time. And I'm not trying to be facetious here or make a joke. I think that we should stay at standard time. And I don't disagree with any of the comments that were made about the ill effects of changing the clock. But I think that we have gotten to the place in our society where we're more interested in recreation, we're interested in other things that we believe are vital and important, and when in reality, maybe they're not. And so I would strongly encourage you to vote no on this, and I'll put an amendment if you would like to change it to standard time, because you see, we could go to standard time without any approval from any congressional authority at all. We can go to standard time. Arizona does not change their time. They stay on standard time. And so it would be an opportunity for us to alleviate all those things that Senator Breezy talked about as being negative, and we could stay on standard time. But I understand that the majority of the people believe that daylight savings time is the way to go. And most of those people don't have to work outside to do things in the morning before they go to town, before they go to work, like rural people do. And so, so be it. The rest of us will get what you decide we should have, and we're very accustomed to that. It's not something that's unusual. It happens every day, all the time, because we're so far removed from the action, it doesn't make any difference. And besides, there's only just a few of us. And so be it. But standard time is what we should be talking about, and not daylight savings time. And as the president said, this is my third opportunity unless I drop in an amendment. I haven't decided yet whether I do that or not, but we need to be on standard time instead of daylight savings time. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Urban. Senator Wayne.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield my time to Senator Urban.
Senator Urban, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. I was thinking about yielding time to Senator Aguilar, but I don't know that he would accept it. Besides, I can't yield time that's been yielded. But Senator Breezy, would you yield to a question?
Senator Breezy, yield, please.
Yes.
Senator Breezy, have you received any correspondence from anyone asking to stay on standard time?
I believe I received an email or two to that effect, but I can talk about standard time if you want me to. Otherwise, I'll get in the queue and talk about it.
Okay, that'd be great. And that may have been my brother. I told him to send you an email, but just kidding. But I have had several emails that would request that we stay on standard time. But I have had more. I will tell you the truth. I've had more to change the daylight savings time. So I'm not trying to discredit those folks who reached out to me with their opinions about daylight savings time. I understand that. But I think sometimes we think about those things and what the repercussions of those are when we're not being affected by the darkness early in the morning. And I'll tell you, that is a serious thing, especially where we live. The bus routes have to travel in the dark, and there are some issues that are significant about having it dark when they go to school and the other things that happen. And so before we make that decision to go to daylight savings time year round, I think we need to take that into consideration. And I think the overwhelming majority of those people who are writing to us and asking us for daylight savings time may be those who enjoy activities later in the evening. And I understand that. I enjoy those as well as anyone. But when I was farming, it didn't make any difference what the clock said. I generally worked before the sun came up and generally was working when it went down, and I didn't pay much attention to what time it was. And so as far as agriculture goes, they're going to do whatever they have to do to get the job done. But it'll make a significant difference to those people who live in the urban areas. But let me reiterate, we need to amend this to go to standard time. That's my opinion again. And Senator Wayne, thank you for the yielding of the time.
Thanks, Senator Urban. Senator John Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I again rise in support of LB 283, but I actually, Senator Erdman's conversation made me curious about something. Would Senator Erdman yield for a question?
Senator Urban, yield, please.
I'd be glad to.
So you talked about having the whole state in one time zone. Is that something we can do by statute here, or would that be again federal?
No, I believe we'd have to have congressional approval to do that. They've drawn the time zones.
They draw the times. Okay, I'd be interested in that topic as well. But my other question for you is: did you know, you brought up Nepal? Did you know that Nepal also is the only country that has a non-rectangular flag? They have, their flag is, I think it's two triangles stacked on top of each other, which is, it's a country that innovates in many ways, I guess. So were you aware of that, I guess is the
I
question.
was not aware of that. Thank you.
Just, it's good to bring up fun facts about Nepal. But Senator Erdman's point, I think, is well taken. And one of the things that made me think about there are states that are on the line, as it were, like we are, which is part of our state is in one time zone and one part's in another. And that does present other challenges. It is probably better to have the entire state in one time zone, which is something that maybe we could contemplate in a future action after resolving this issue. But one of the things Senator Erdman brought up was Arizona is on standard time permanently. And this is probably a broader conversation that we don't necessarily need to have now, but states, the way the world works physically is that when you're closer to the equator, you get more hours of light on both sides. And so a state like Arizona is further to the south than we are. And so they have different implications as it pertains to what times and time zones. And then they are differently placed within their own time zone. I think they would probably be sort of in the central region of the west. I don't actually know if they were in the mountain or the west time zone, but they're kind of, I guess, on the different location than we are, which of course means that states like Iowa would maybe have a different consideration of whether they want to be in standard or daylight and whether they want to change or not. But I do think that that's one of the good things about this LB 283 is it puts us in a context of making sure that we are in alignment with neighboring states before we make this change. But again, consistency is the key. And that's the virtue that LB 283 is pursuing with moving to permanent daylight time. But again, permanent standard time would solve the same problem, but we'd still have the issue of the two time zones. I will, if Senator Erdman wanted more time, I would yield him the remainder of my time if I had any left.
Thanks, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Urban, 2 minutes left.
I think, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. I haven't decided yet. But Senator Aguilar was a little concerned that I was actually going to yield him some time. So he's feeling a lot better now because he knows I couldn't yield time. He yielded to me. But I'll be interested in hearing what Senator Breezy has to say about standard time. But if you think about it and you give consideration to what Senator Clement said, all right, December 21st, shortest day of the year, December 21st, the sun would come up in Lincoln at 8:46. 8:46. And he said at 8:16, it would be twilight. You'd be able to see something. Not drive with your lights off, but you could see something. Now think about that. You vote for this. If you vote for daylight savings time year round in the eastern part of the state, that's what's going to happen.
1 minute.
And so as you think about the opportunity you're going to have to change that back, may be impossible. All right? Because the overwhelming majority in this room is going to say daylight savings time year round. And 8:46, the sun comes up. But the sun sets later, right? The sun sets later. A lot of golfing, a lot of outside activity you can do on December 21st. So I think it's important to have that late afternoon sunshine in December, right? Unless you're an ice fisherman like Senator Gregor, then it'd be helpful. But Senator Gregor's going to be able to go ice fishing all the time come next year. A lot to be said for that, Senator. So it looks to me like we should go standard time. And I've said that numerous times, and I'll keep saying that. And my vote
That's
will be
time.
read on this until we
That's
amend
time,
it.
Senator.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Urban. Senator Fraser would like us to recognize some guests today. We have with us 29 fourth graders from Fullerton Elementary School, Fullerton, Nebraska, and 3 teachers and 3 sponsors. Those guests are all with us in the North Balcony. Please rise so we can welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature. Continuing discussion. Senator Wayne.
I'd like to yield, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to yield my time to Senator Jacobson.
Senator Jacobson, you yield 5 minutes. You wait.
Well, thank you. I think I didn't know that I was in the queue, but I'll take it. I guess my sense is I'm kind of one of those hybrid senators. Most people know me as a banker for 42 years, but I've also been involved in production agriculture all that time. And I think the agricultural community is probably a little divided on which side of daylight savings time do you stick with. I think there's universal support for going with one time and sticking with it. I can tell you that my sense would be, given that we're in kind of a gig economy where people tend to work a day job and then work afterwards, I'm inclined to support Senator Breezy's bill just simply because we're in a situation where you're going to have more hours of daylight after 5 o'clock. I think business people, it's a little impractical to move 8 to 5, that 8 to 5 workday. The schools could work with starting school later to accommodate the school children and work from that standpoint. But I do think there's a lot of value in having more hours of sunlight after 5 o'clock. And Senator Friesen, I know your tractors are later model than mine and they have better lights. But for me, I need to find my way around during the day and my lights aren't as good. So I'm in support of Senator Breezy's bill. I do like the idea of picking a time and sticking with it, going through the process. It's not going to change tomorrow. We're going to need other states to approve it. But I'm inclined to vote yes on the bill. So thank you, Senator Wayne, for yielding time.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. I was going to ask the other Senator Kavanaugh to yield to a question, but I think he's hiding from me. So if he would like it, I'll yield the remainder of my time to Senator Erdman.
Senator Urban, 4 minutes, 45.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. So I listened to Senator Jacobson. I understand what he's saying, but let's think about just for a moment what he said about starting school later. So the parents all go to work at 8 o'clock and the parents have an opportunity to drop their children off at school, but now they have to wait an hour to take them to school. I don't believe that's going to work. There's not a chance that that'll fly. If I were a parent, I wouldn't like that. I'd have to find a place for my child to go until school opened at 9 instead of 8 or whatever, 8:30. So I don't know that that's an option. So if the business people would like to have more daylight after work, why don't they open at 7 and close at 4? That's within their justification to do that, or their authority. They could open at 7 and they could close at 4. I know some businesses that open at 8 and close from 12 to 1 for lunch or dinner, whatever part of the state you're in, and then open again up at 1 o'clock. So they make that decision. So businesses could do that. They could start at 7 and then they could close at 4 and then they have the same amount of time. But they wouldn't have to deal with darkness at 8:30 in December. And they could make those adjustments to their work schedule. Now, I know at my county that Morrill County has made a decision that the courthouse is not open on Friday afternoons. They close at 11. And they've extended or added time to each day to make up for the 4 hours they're closed or 5 hours are closed after that. And it took us a while. It took us a while at the county level to get used to that the courthouse wasn't open on Friday afternoon. But we adjusted to it and we made that change and it seemed to be working. At least they continue to do it, so it must be. And so the same thing would happen with the business start at 7 instead of 8, close at 4 instead of 5. Not a big deal. That's already something they could do without us changing the law. But what we can do, and we're allowed by Congress to do, is put it on standard time year round. That is what we should do. And then they decide how much time they want after they get done work by the hours that they're open. That would be, I know this is going to sound strange, but that would be local control. Imagine that. And we talk about local control all of the time here. Every bill we're going to introduce, that takes away local control. Well, tell me, going to daylight saving time, does that take away local control? Yeah, it does. So why don't we leave it up to the individuals that have a business or whatever they do to set their own time, all right, without us telling them. So the longer this goes, the more convinced I am that standard time is the correct time to be on year round. And there may be a chance I persuaded one or maybe two more, but we'll see. And then we'll get another shot. This is just general file, so we'll get it on select and we'll see what happens there. But anyway, thanks for the time.
Thanks, Senator Urban. I see no one in the queue. Senator Breezy, you recognize to close on the advance of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to address a few of the comments that were made, and I certainly appreciate Senator Erdman's perspective on standard time and appreciate him bringing that up. But standard time was attempted 3 to 4 years ago. Senator Brosh brought a bill. I sat in the government committee that time. Didn't get out of committee. It met a firestorm of opposition, and it tended to be the recreational community in the summer that didn't want to lose that hour of daylight in the summer. And I don't think you're ever going to overcome that opposition. That's why there's only 2 states, I believe, in the country that are on year-round standard time, and why there's roughly 19 other states have adopted to embark on the endeavor to get to year-round daylight savings time. And the issue of recreation was brought up, but we're talking, we're not going to get to year-round standard time. We're going to have that extra hour of daylight in the summer regardless. We're just talking about what we're going to do here in the winter by talking about year-round daylight savings time. And folks brought up, the downside of it, of, kids going to school in the dark. And that is potentially an issue, but I would wager that out in Senator Erdman's district, most kids are going into school in the dark to start with. They're going into the school in the dark now, or at least in the middle of winter they were. And school start times, or you talk about local control, school start times are a local decision. The local school board can change their start time. They can push their start time back a little bit if they are concerned about the lack of daylight in the morning. But again, we need to get off the time change. I think today's a prime example of why. And if you're looking for ways to grow our state, and we all should be, I would submit to you that going to year-round daylight savings time, based on the data I've seen, is a way that we can help generate economic activity in our state and help grow our state for the future. And I'd urge your support of LB 283. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Breezy. Members, you heard the debate on LB 283. The question for the body, advance of the bill to E&R initial. Those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
40 yeas, 3 nays on the advancement of the bill.
LB 283 advances. Moving now to consent calendar bills, first of which is LB 779. Mr. Clerk.
779, a bill by Senator Greger. It's a bill for enacting the Nebraska National Guard. It eliminates an entitlement relating to tuition assistance, introduced on January 5, referred to the government committee, advanced to general file. I have no committee amendments. I do have an amendment to the bill, however, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Greger, recognized and open on LB 779.
Thank you. Mr. President and members of the legislature, LB 779 removes the 10-year limitation to access the state tuition assistance for members of the Nebraska National Guard. I'd like to thank Speaker Hilgers for adding this to the consent calendar. Members of the Nebraska National Guard are eligible for free tuition at the University of Nebraska, state colleges, community colleges, and certain independent colleges when obtaining a bachelor's degree, an associate degree, diploma, or certificate, and a 50% deduction in tuition for graduate degree. Reimbursement for tuition at a independent college cannot be more than what UNL charges. Currently, National Guard members are eligible for this benefit for a period of 10 years from the date of their initial membership. This period could be extended up to 5 years due to deployment. There are statutory caps on the amount of funding, $900,000, and the number of members, 1,200, that qualify for this benefit during any fiscal year. Members receiving tuition assistance must maintain satisfactory performance with the Guard and agree to serve 3 years after completion of the courses for the tuition assistance is granted. LB 779 would harmonize Nebraska National Guard with the active selective reserve component, having no lifetime limit on tuition credit. Last year, Senator Breezy introduced LB 4, which removed the provision preventing any member of the active selective reserve with more than 10 years of military service from using the tuition credit. Currently, if LB 779 were to pass, it is estimated that an additional 9 members of the National Guard would qualify to use the tuition assistance for graduate school at a projected cost of $13,800. The National Guard is not seeking any increase in funding to implement LB 779 as they feel it is workable within the current funding level. The idea for this bill was initiated due to interest expressed among members wanting to pursue a degree later in life. This could serve as a recruiting and retention tool for the National Guard, as well as provide new level of continuity in highly skilled certification or degree necessary professions within the Guard. LB 779 was heard before the Government, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee. Persons representing the military department and the National Guard testified in support. No one testified against the bill, and it was advanced from committee on an 8-0 vote. In summary, LB 779 does not increase state costs. It benefits the members of the National Guard, and it may attract more future members. Therefore, I urge your green vote on the advancement of LB 779 to the second stage of debate. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Gregor. Mr. Clerk.
Senator Kavanaugh would move to amend with floor amendment 99.
Senator McHale-Kavanaugh, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. I rise in support of LB 779, and I am opposed to floor amendment 99. What my amendment does is takes a shall and makes it a may. So that would undo some of the intention of this bill. So when I am done talking after the 15 minutes, I will be withdrawing this floor amendment. So I wanted to start with page 34 in the rules book, Rule 5, Section 6. And for context, for people watching, Senator Chambers was very good at keeping us on task with the rules. And if we slipped from following our own rules, we would get a very heavy lecture, usually for days. I don't intend to lecture for days, but I had intended to take the time on the consent calendar bills regardless, so it seems like a good opportunity to use other than telling you my random musings about these bills. So, consent calendar, Section 6, Rule 5, page 34, if you want to follow along in your bright colored book. The Speaker shall have the authority to place on consent calendar any bills advanced out of committee with no dissenting votes. The Speaker shall exercise sole discretion in determining both when to implement consent calendar and which bills comply with the requirements of this section shall be placed on it. B, a bill placed on consent calendar shall be announced on the agenda at least 24 hours prior to any action being taken regarding it on consent calendar. C, any bill placed on consent calendar shall be removed at the written request of 3 or more senators. Such requests must be filed with the clerk prior to the expiration of 15 minutes of debate. At that stage of consideration on the bill to be removed. D, a bill on consent calendar shall be allotted 15 minutes for introduction and debate. Upon either the completion of debate or the expiration of 15 minutes, whichever comes first, a vote shall be taken to advance the bill. If there is a pending motion or amendment before the body when either the debate ends or the 15 minutes expires, a vote shall be taken on the pending matter, followed by an immediate vote to advance the bill. If the pending matter is an amendment to an amendment following a vote on the amendment to the amendment, a vote shall be taken on the original bill amendment. If the original amendment has been divided, then the vote shall be on the original undivided amendment being considered. That's a lot of amendments. So I read that, first of all, because we're doing consent calendar, but also because we have followed the process. And it's important that we follow the process, because without our rules, we have more chaos than we already have. And our rules are really important to maintaining the integrity of this institution and to maintaining the integrity of the policy that we are passing and to maintain the integrity between our colleagues. If we can't rely on the rules and we can't rely on one another, what can we rely on and what can the people of Nebraska expect from us? I've told several senators, and I did also this morning on the mic, that I wasn't going to do anything. I'm taking the 15 minutes on every one of these and then pulling the amendment. Now, if I wanted to be malicious, what I would do according to the rules, and it's not necessarily, if I did it today, it would be malicious. If somebody else did this for other reasons, I'm not saying that this is a malicious thing to do. It's just if I had, and I'm not. But if I were to be malicious today, I would go around and try and convince 2 of my colleagues to sign on to a letter, and then this would be removed from the agenda. And you can do that up until 15 minutes before. So before we start on whatever one of these there is, if I submit a letter with 3 signatures, it's pulled. I know this from experience because my freshman year in a late night, that happened to my consent bill on final reading, of all things. The speaker at that time had to come over to me in the middle of final reading. You're not supposed to get up during final reading, and tell me that my bill a letter had just been submitted and we were going to pass over my bill because a letter had been submitted, and nobody had the courtesy to tell me, which you don't have to. But that was my freshman year. So, and how much time do I have?
Roughly 5 minutes.
I have 5 minutes left to open.
Yes.
And then what time do we go to on this?
Well, we're down to 6 minutes and 45 seconds before we vote.
Oh, okay, great. And I don't believe there's anybody in the queue that I'm holding up, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, so we've got 6 minutes and 45 seconds. Oh, so I should get in the queue, I guess. So this bill is changing provisions regarding the tuition assistance program for the Nebraska National Guard. And I bring that back up because I do think it's important to note that this is an important piece of legislation and it's on consent. And what is the difference between consent and a priority? Consent is something that is considered to be not controversial, doesn't have any opposition, doesn't have a fiscal note, and generally is expected to go quickly, which is why the maximum of 15 minutes of debate. And so then it is put on what we call a consent calendar. This consent calendar today has 5 hours worth of debate on it. And we have a lot of priority bills that we still haven't had on general file. And we have a lot of, we don't have a lot of time. But if we have time to do 5 hours of consent, then I think we should do 5 hours of consent. If that is how we're going to schedule things, then I am going to show up for that and be here for that and make sure that we get our money's worth of our consent calendar. So let's see here. We've got the removal. Okay, a bill placed on consent calendar shall be announced on the agenda at least 24 hours prior to any action being taken regarding it on consent calendar. So I'm not entirely sure. Oh, before on the agenda. So I believe that's when in the mornings, the speaker makes an announcement that he's going to be doing another consent calendar. And so then that is the formal announcement 24 hours prior. I will say another rule is the 7-day notice for a hearing. And I was a little panicked when I got an email, which thank you to the chairman of Transportation Committee, Senator Friesen. He has kept his word about that bill, and we have a hearing scheduled for that amendment. But I thought it was for tomorrow. And I was like, well, that's not 7 days, but I misread the email. And it is for 1 week from tomorrow. So even extra notice. Thank you to our committee clerk for getting that out. So, that's another rule. It's an important rule because there are a lot of people that are interested in that specific amendment. And that's the reason that Senator Friesen agreed that if we attached the amendment, we would have a hearing. And that gives the people that have opinions about it the opportunity to come and voice their opinions. If we just scheduled it the next day, they wouldn't even have the opportunity to submit written testimony through our official channels. So it is really important, not only for the body, but for the public, that we follow our rules. And I'm going to move on to another rule. Okay, so again, under Rule 5, Section 1, drafting of bills. The bill drafter shall prepare all bills and amendments in proper form when requested by members of the legislature, newly elected members of the legislature, or heads of executive departments. No bills or major amendments shall be introduced or considered unless the same has been approved as to form and draftsmanship by the bill drafter. In order to shorten the length of sections, the bill drafter shall, in the drafting of new sections, make each paragraph a separate section, except when to do so would be contrary to sound bill drafting practice. The bill drafter shall make available a continuing compilation of sections to which amendments are proposed, so as to reduce unnecessary duplication of bills. This section index of bills drafted shall be available to all senators, newly elected senators, and other persons entitled to have bills drafted. After January 1 of each year, no bill shall be drafted by the bill drafter unless requested or authorized by a member of the legislature. So what I find fascinating about this is that it kind of outlines like the job description of a bill drafter in our rules. I wonder if we outline anybody else's job description. It's very meticulous about when you shall do things, and that so this shall in the drafting of new sections make each paragraph a separate section, except when to do so would be contrary to sound bill drafting practice.
So that's time, but you got 1 minute 30 on your final opportunity.
Okay, thank you. So the fact that unless Senator Gregor wants to close. Senator Gregor, do you want any time to close? Okay. All right. I will continue then. So this section of the index of bills drafted, sorry, I lost my space. So I was talking about the fact that we have a shall and how they should do something, but then we actually contradict the shall within the rules. So we say that they shall, thank you, they shall, in drafting new sections, make a paragraph a separate section unless they deem otherwise. It's kind of funny. Normally a shall is very clear. Wonder why we don't have it be they may do this unless they deem otherwise. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know how that works. The shall, telling them that they shall do something, but then also saying, but use your own discretion. That might be an interesting thing for us to look into. The next piece of Rule 5, Section 2, is content and forms of bills. A bill shall be designed as legislative bill, and then it has an underscore, you put in the number. Style of bill, const.art.3, numeral 3, comma.
That's time, Senator.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Kavanaugh. And I understand you wanted to withdraw FA 499, is that correct?
Yes.
FA 99 is withdrawn. Remember, the question for the body is the advance of LB 7790 in our initial. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
42 ayes, no nays on the advancement of the bill, Mr. President.
LB 779 advances. Next bill, please.
Mr. President, if I may, Senator Albright would like to have a meeting of the State Tribal Committee underneath the north balcony now. State Tribal underneath the north balcony now. Mr. President, Legislative Bill 808 is a bill by Senator Moorfeld. It's a bill for an act relating to Uniform Controlled Substances Act. It changes provision relating to schedules of controlled substances. Introduced on January 6, referred to the Judiciary Committee. The bill is advanced to general file. No committee amendments. I do have another amendment to the bill, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Moorfeld is recognized to open LB 808.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I am honored to introduce LB 808. This is essentially the Controlled Substances Act update that happens every 2 years. There was no opposition testimony or anything like that. Just to give a very brief summary, what this does is it makes sure that we update the definitions and the types of drugs, because what people do in these laboratories is they create new strains, new types of drugs that then are not covered under the Controlled Substances Act. So that means that we're not able to actually prosecute those cases. So just to give you an idea of a rundown, it makes several different changes in Schedule 1. New items 74 through 94 are synthetic fentanyl, none of which are FDA approved and commonly referred to as street drugs. New item number 5 is a stimulant or hallucinogen, commonly referred to as a street drug as well. The item 3 on page 16 is an amphetamine, and then item 4 on page 9 is a psychostimulant and street designer drug. On Schedule 2, item on page 13 is currently used by clandestine laboratory operators to create fentanyl. And then for the Schedule 4, there's a new item. It's numbered on page, I believe, 60, and it's a treatment for ADHD and is similar to FDA-approved Ritalin. I thank you for your consideration of this legislation. And just to repeat, it is the kind of biannual update to our schedules of drugs so that we keep that updated. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Moorfeld. Mr. Clerk. Mr. Clerk.
I'm sorry, Mr. President. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh would move to amend with floor amendment 100.
Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you recognized to open on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. I rise in support of Senator Moorfeld's LB 808. So my amendment changes any and inserts all on page 2 of line 9. It's really semantics, so I will be withdrawing it upon the 15 minutes. I should give my... Okay, so I'm going to go back to Rule 5. Sorry, I'm just making sure I know how much time I have. So I was on Section 2 of Rule 5, and A bill shall be designated as LB _. B, no bill shall contain more than one subject, and the same shall be clearly expressed in the title. No law shall be amended unless the new act contains the section or sections as amended, and the section or sections as amended shall be repealed. Now, there's still more sections to this, but we do actually amend more than one subject into a bill. We call them Christmas trees. And I actually don't know if that's officially in our rules or not. This is very informative for me. Okay, so then we go to Section 2, Rule 5, Section 2C. An amendatory bill or constitutional provision shall be so prepared and printed as to show the new matter proposed, old matter to be retained, and old matter to be omitted from the statutes or constitutions. D, appropriation bills and, quote, A bills shall contain the following elements. 1, the phrase, quote, there is a hereby appropriated, end quote. 2, a specific fund type shall be identified and the fund shall be appropriated. 3, the amount to be appropriated from such fund shall be identified. 4, a specific budget program or a specific statement reflecting the purpose for expanding such funds shall be identified. And 5, the time period during which such funds shall be expended shall be identified. Okay, so in Rule 5, Section 2, it doesn't say anything about Christmas trees. It only says under Part B that no bill shall contain more than one subject, and the same shall be clearly expressed in the title. No law shall be amended unless the new act contains the section or sections as amended, and the section or sections as amended shall be repealed. So I guess we'll find out if Christmas trees are in here if we break our own rules. Next, we've got, oops, the revisor correctional bills and pre-printing. I'm just skipping ahead to preview if there's anything about our Christmas trees. Not in Rule 5. There's 15 sections of Rule 5. Okay, so revisor correctional bills pre-printing. Preceding each legislative session, the chairperson or any member of the executive board of the legislative council, if the executive board so requests, the senator who in the preceding session served as chairperson of the judiciary committee shall sign as introducer the revisor of statutes correctional bills. The clerk of the legislature shall number these bills consecutively beginning with the number 1 and shall show the committee reference to be general file. The clerk of the legislature shall have these bills printed before the convening of the next regular session. That's interesting. I didn't know that rule. And then B, in addition to causing to be printed the revisor bills, the clerk shall number and cause to be printed all bills delivered to him or her by the executive board, provided said board has referred said bills to a standing committee. No bill so printed shall be withdrawn after the legislature convenes. I like that it has him or her. To the clerk, because we've had the same clerk for, I think we have the longest serving clerk in the country. Is that right? I'm looking at him. Is that right? That we have the longest serving clerk in the country? We'll just say it is. I'm putting it in the record. So, okay. But I do appreciate our progressive thinking of entertaining the possibility that we might have a woman someday. Anything is possible. Section 4, we're still on Rule 5, introducers signing bills. A, members shall introduce only such bills as they are willing to endorse and support personally. The last name and district shall be used unless an initial or name is necessary to identify the introducer. Last name and district shall be. Oh, so I do now use my initial, but I didn't, my first 2 years, I didn't use my initial, and I just did it because my handwriting is unintelligible, but I also would put my district number to make sure that the clerk's office knew which Senator Kavanaugh it was. Any member may request to have his or her name added as a co-introducer of the bill, but only if the principal introducer has concurred in writing or electronically to that request. So that's where we go on our Uninet and sign on to bills. Mine is frozen, but I could go in here and request from Senator Morfeld to sign on to this bill. B, a standing committee or special committee may introduce a bill for any purpose, including at the request of another senator, provided said bill receives the endorsement of a majority of the committee members whose name shall be on the bill. C, no bill. Wait, I'm going to go back to B. Okay, so you have to, for it to be a committee, for the committee to be printed on the bill, you have to have the majority of the committee signing onto the bill. I had never really asked how that happens, but I've signed on to a few committee bills, and it's always been the entire committee has signed on when they are committee bills, but it's interesting to know that you just have to have the majority. Okay, so that was, okay. C, Section 4, Rule 5C. No bill shall be introduced after the 10th legislative day of any session except, number 1, A, as in appropriations, A bills, appropriation bills, and bills introduced at the request of the governor may be introduced at any time. And 2, a standing or special committee may request that the legislature consider introduction of a bill. A vote of 3/5 of the elected members of the legislature shall be required for such bill to be introduced, and a copy of the statement of intent for such bill to be placed on each member's desk before introduction of the bill is voted on. So I knew that we could, we can vote to suspend the rules and introduce a bill and all of those things, or suspend the rules and withdraw a bill. I did not know that the governor could introduce a bill we could introduce the bill at the request of the governor at any time. So the governor could request that we introduce the bill today. That is fascinating. And we wouldn't have to take a vote. It would just, if the governor called me right now, looking at my phone, make sure it's ringing. If the governor would call me right now and ask me to introduce a bill, and I take that bill and I introduce it, that would be it. We wouldn't take any votes on that. Not saying I disagree with that. I just didn't know. Man, I know a lot of the rules, and there's also a lot I don't know. I guess that's why it helps to be here for 40 years. Okay, so I was at governor anytime, standing committee. Okay, and then 3, the appropriations committee may introduce bills.
1 minute.
Thank you. Enabling the recommendations of 1 minute on my opening, and then how much time is left?
There'll be another couple minutes after that.
Okay. Okay, so the Appropriations Committee may introduce bills enabling the appropriations recommendations contained in the annual report required by Rule 8, Section 2 and 3. Such bills shall be introduced no later than the 5th legislative day following the presentation of the report as required by Rule 8, Section 3. Well, that's a lot. So you got to kind of cross-reference. So the Appropriation Committee enabling appropriation recommendation annual report required by Rule 8 shall be introduced no later than the 5th legislative day. The appropriations recommendations continue.
That's time, Senator. You're recognized for 2 minutes and 20.
Thank you. 2 minutes, 20?
Correct.
Okay. So the Appropriations Committee has to introduce things in the first 5 days. That's interesting. Specific things, I think. I'm sure I'm not reading this entirely correctly, but okay. So Rule 5, Section 4, subset D. Individual members shall not be limited as to bill introduction. Each committee shall be limited to 8 bills each session. Bills introduced as a result of an interim study of the Legislative Council shall be included within the limitations prescribed by this section. Special committees created as a result of an interim study resolution and as authorized by the Executive Board shall be considered as separate committees for purposes of the limitations prescribed by this bill. Bills introduced under Rule 5, Section 3A, Rule 5, Section 4C3, and bills introduced at the request of the governor will not be included in the limitation. I know we've had discussion previously about limiting the number of bills a senator can bring. I don't support that idea, but I can see why we would want to sometimes maybe have fewer bills to discuss. But I do think that we represent the people, and so we need to have the ability to fully represent them through whatever we introduce. Okay, and now we are on E of Section 4 of Rule 5. The introducers of this bill must submit a statement of intent for each bill to the appropriate committee chairperson at least 24 hours prior to the bill's hearing. The statement of intent should discuss clearly and completely the purposes and effects of the bill. I think that's about my time, so I will sit down. Thank you. Oh, I withdraw my amendment. Thank you.
Floor Amendment 100 is withdrawn. Senator McDonald, we've got 26 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will wait till the next bill.
Thanks, Senator McDonald. The question for the body is the advance of LB 808 to ENR initial. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
42 ayes, no nays on the advancement of the bill.
Legislative Bill 808 advances. Proceeding to the next bill, please.
Legislative Bill 1092, bill originally introduced by Senator Flood. It's a bill for an act relating to Nebraska State Colleges that authorizes establishment of the Risk Loss Trust and provides requirements for use of the Risk Loss Trust and provides for applicability. Introduced on January 19, referred to the Banking, Commerce, and Insurance Committee, advanced to general file. No committee amendments. I do have an amendment to the bill, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Flood, recognized to open on LB 1092.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I want to thank Speaker Hilders for placing this bill, LB 1092, on consent calendar. This bill would provide the Nebraska State Colleges with the authority and requirements necessary to establish risk loss trusts for the purpose of paying losses and expenses arising out of liability and property claims. I want to make clear this provides only the authorization and does not have an attendant appropriation. As many of you know, liability and property insurance costs have increased substantially, and the market continues to experience volatility. During the committee hearing for LB 1092, Angela Melton, Vice Chancellor with the Nebraska State College System, spoke to the rise of insurance costs in Nebraska. Over the past 5 years, state colleges have experienced a cumulative increase of 138% in costs for their liability, cyber, and property coverages. That's an increase of approximately $485,000 in 2017 to $1.2 million in 2021, with most of the increase taking place in the last 2 years. I want you to know that the university system already has in place a risk loss trust and has had that for several years. Peru State College provides an example of the recent increase in deductibles. In 2019, the college experienced a significant hailstorm causing damage to every building roof, resulting in $2.3 million worth of repairs. In 2019, the deductible for this was $50,000. Under the current program, the college would have to cover the entirety of the damage themselves, as the deductible goes to 5% of the building value with a maximum of $2.5 million. LB 1092 would provide the state colleges additional options in structuring their insurance programs to respond to a dynamic market and a mechanism for the state colleges to avoid the significant impacts of substantial deductibles or large claims. This bill mirrors the authority granted to the university system, which currently operates various risk loss trusts. LB 1092 would offer the state colleges the same tools to manage the costs associated with claims, deductibles, and premiums. This bill, LB 1092, received no opposition or neutral testimony in committee and was advanced to general file by unanimous consent. I would ask the body for a green vote, and the state college system would also appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Flood. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Michaela Cavanaugh would move to amend the floor amendment 101.
Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. In hearing Senator Flood's opening, my floor amendment is very problematic because it turns a may to a shall, and that is definitely not his intention. So when I am done speaking, I will absolutely be withdrawing this amendment. I support LB 1092. A refresher, because I've been asked about this a little bit as to why I am going through the rules. I had intended to take all of the time on general file. At some point last week, I started drafting floor amendments. I think this one I drafted on the 10th, which I believe was Thursday. And the reason that I am taking all the time on the consent general file is because consent is supposed to be up to 15 minutes of debate. And I'm going to take the full 15 minutes because we have 20 bills listed here on consent, again, ahead of Senator priority bills. And so I am going to take the full 15 minutes, which is 5 hours, because that is how it's been scheduled. I do have, can I yield time to anyone?
You may.
Okay, I know Senator McDonald had wanted to speak, and I'd like to yield my time to him.
So McDonald, you've got 8 minutes and 43.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to ask Senator Kavanaugh to reconsider doing this. And one of the reasons is, of course, it's comes down to one of my bills, and it's LB 661. LB 661 is a bill that we proposed last year that is on the agenda today, and it's trying to protect bus drivers. Bus drivers who do nothing but report to work, transport the public, and on the average are assaulted 2 bus drivers a week in the city of Omaha. But it's not just the idea of my bill, but concentrating on these bus drivers that last year took time off from their jobs, used vacation time. They went to every senator. Some senators disagreed with the bill, which I understood. But at that moment in time, there was 39 senators commit to vote for that legislation. These bus drivers again took time off today to be here when we started looking at the agenda based on the idea that we possibly could get to this legislation this morning, or we should be up based on a normal calendar this afternoon. I don't think it's fair to those individuals. As senators, we understand the process and we understand some of the inner workings and some of the people that are upset about different issues. But for the people that are watching and the people that are standing in that rotunda that have put the time and effort into the legislation, came down and testified, then took time off of work to visit with every senator, get the commitments from senators, and then hope for their opportunity, which didn't happen last year. But this year, based on the scheduling, they have their day. And that day could be totally gone here based on the idea of Senator Kavanaugh taking 15 minutes, which is her right, on every one of our consent calendar bills today. So I'm asking her to reconsider, not for the members of this body, but for the public, for the people that are in the rotunda, for the people that are watching that want to see legislation debated on and moved forward. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator McDonald. Senator Wayne.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, there is a simple solution. We could file a motion to reschedule the agenda. We can hear that motion at any time up to the speaker, and we could vote on rescheduling the agenda. Just proposing that if people are concerned about what Senator Kavanaugh's are doing, I get it. But I just rose because I've had about 7, maybe 8 senators ask me about Juneteenth on the schedule, which is on today. So I have 2 bills up today, so I understand Senator McDonald's concern. The bill, read the amendment. The amendment reinstates Arbor Day. So I'm just going to say that right now so everybody doesn't have to keep asking me. We're not getting rid of Arbor Day. Originally, I proposed to get rid of Arbor Day because if you recall, we couldn't have anything that cost a little bit of amount of money. And so if I got rid of Arbor Day and added Juneteenth, then it was a wash. But since then, Juneteenth has become a federal holiday. So there is no issue. We reinstate Arbor Day or keep Arbor Day. So I'm not getting rid of Arbor Day. So the 8th senator does not have to come up and ask me if the bill says that. The one-liner is incorrect because we haven't adopted the amendment to just add Juneteenth. Once we adopt the amendment on consent, that one-liner I hope changes to just say add Juneteenth. So hopefully that clarifies. So the 8th senator doesn't have to ask me if we're still eliminating Arbor Day. It's no real cost to the state. And if anybody wants a history lesson on why Juneteenth is important, I'll be happy to give that to you. It is not an African-American thing. It is actually an American thing. I would tell you to go read the transcript, read the opening of this bill, and you'll see the history on why, historically, from an American standpoint, Juneteenth should be celebrated, because it was really the first time that we all became somewhat free and started living to the ideals of a more perfect union. So while I just wanted to say that on the record before we broke to lunch and more people came and started asking me afterwards, I will start having a little conversation on the budget. I do think it's important that we just don't read the handout provided by appropriations, but actually read the bills in the actual budget. So that's 1011, 1012, 1013, because I think you'll see what's in the appropriation committee budget proposal, the nicer pamphlet, doesn't always tell the true story of what goes on, and that's why I call it a beautiful lie. And I'll just bring up one since I'm already here and I got a little bit of time. The Military Base Development and Support Fund. That sounds like it's all going to OFIT. Which one? I noticed last week there was somebody who voted no against tribal organizations or tribes being able to work or apply for grants within a certain tax base. But essentially, OFIT is its own sovereign nation. They have their own laws. Our police and fire typically don't go on there unless it's a catastrophic emergency. They don't pay property taxes on there. In fact, there was a bill who tried to reduce some taxes that the AG said, or change the taxes to a fund in lieu of, and the AG said that was unconstitutional. But we have no problem continuing to give OFIT money. But what's interesting about this Military Base and Development Support Fund, if you look on AM 20 of 1012, it actually outlines exactly what it can go for. And one of them is a public golf course in Bellevue, Willow Lakes. I don't know about you all, but if I brought a bill saying let's give $30 million and part of that was to help a city-owned golf course like Vincent in my district, I'm pretty sure that would get voted down. Nevertheless,
1 minute.
I like the introducer of the bill. I understand what she's trying to do, but track and field stadium improvements, parade ground walking trail, landscape enhancements, base lake improvements, deterrence park, looking glass, heritage park, rooftop garden. That's the outline of what these funds are going to be used for. These are all trails and lakes that we are going to use for. What's interesting, though, is if this was an ARPA bill, they could do it under ARPA. When it comes to green space and parks, it's like unlimited what you can do with ARPA when it comes to those. But instead, we create a fund, put it in a budget bill, use cash, because now we're going to create a permanency program in which you continue to transfer cash down the road. That's why you do it through a cash fund in a budget versus ARPA, because we know ARPA is a one-time spend. This allows the committee to continue to put money into parks and everything else. I find it ironic that those two bills equal about $55 million.
That's time, Senator.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Wayne. Senator McDonald, you were next in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since we're going to start talking about the budget here a little bit to address some of the points that Senator Wayne just made, through the process and with the budget, and I'm not speaking for Senator Sanders, it was her bill, but the improvements we need to make to the base, I think that should be discussed, and the need that the people that live and defend our country on a daily basis and their families that they leave behind when they're defending our country, what kind of living facilities do they have? And is there private money, a large amount of private money coming in to help the base? Yes, there is. Was there the idea of that money was sitting there at $50 million based on what had been set aside for possibly us getting the next project, which we did not get the Star Wars, or excuse me, the project that went to Colorado, but we repurposed that money based on 3 bills that were brought to us this year. And what I was trying to say is the Space Force project that we did not receive as the state of Nebraska. So we did repurpose that money, but I also want to make sure that people understand that is for the people that are serving our country on the base, that there's been, I think, facilities that have been neglected for years, and I think we should support those people that defend our country and their families that they leave behind when they're defending our country. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator McDonald. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, we've got 1 minute 18.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. I appreciate Senator McDonald's request the previous time on the mic. And so I know that Senator Wayne had suggested a motion to reorder the agenda, and I assumed that Senator McDonald would not feel comfortable introducing such a thing. So I have introduced a motion to reorder the agenda so that Senator McDonald's bill would be up first at 1:30. So I don't know when that comes up. Is that next for debate or no? Just looking up at the front to find out when we would talk about the motion to reorder. Maybe it'd be after lunch. But I will yield the remainder of my time to the chair so we can vote and uphold my floor amendment.
Thank you. Senator Flood, there's 25 seconds remaining if you care to close.
Well, I'd ask you to vote for my bill, LB 1092. I'm not on any level for any reordering of the agenda, and would echo Senator McDonald's comments that maybe after a good relaxing lunch, we could pull all these amendments and keep trucking. Thank you very much for your discussion, and I look forward to a green vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Flood. That floor amendment's been withdrawn, Senator Kavanaugh. The question for the body is the advance of LB 1092 to ENR initial. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay.
Yes, sir.
Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
43 ayes, no nays on the advancement of the bill, Mr. President.
LB 1092 advances. Next bill, please.
Mr. President, Legislative Bill 1204, bill originally introduced by Senator Breese. It's a bill for an act relating to the Liquor Control Act. It changes provisionally in the application forms and delivery methods for licenses and warning signs, introduced on January 20, referred to General Affairs, advanced to General File. There are committee amendments pending, Mr. President.
Senator Breeze recognized to open on 1204.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand today to introduce LB 1204, a bill that was brought at the request of the Nebraska Liquor Control Commission. This bill makes several technical administrative changes that will make the work of the commission easier and more efficient, and will make the process of applying for a liquor license less work for the applicants. Changes made by this bill allow the commission to send licenses electronically. It removes the requirement that certain documents be filed in triplicate with the commission, and removes the requirement that applications for licenses be signed by a notary public. And this doesn't cause any concern because a full background check is run by the commission on any applicant for a liquor license. And it allows the commission to deliver warning signs that they typically send out otherwise through through electronic means. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Breeze, you can open the committee amendment care to.
Yes, we have one small amendment to LB 1204 AM 1894. This simply clarifies that the commission can send a license to the licensee directly, electronically, upon confirmation from the clerk of the applicable city, village, or county that the necessary fees and taxes have been paid by the licensee to the clerk. This bill had one proponent testifier, no opposition, and was voted out of committee 8-0. I would appreciate your green vote on the amendment and on the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Breeze. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, excuse me, Senator Kavanaugh would move to amend the committee amendments, a floor amendment 102.
Senator Kavanaugh, I recognize opening your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Floor Amendment 102 strikes on page 3, line 17, shall, and replaces with a may. I do not intend to keep that amendment up, and at the end of my time, I will be withdrawing it. So I put in a motion to reorder the schedule because it was clear that Senator McDonald would like for his bill to be gotten to today. I am taking time on these bills First of all, because I can. Second of all, because time is the only tool I have. And third is to prove a point that if you want your bills that are priorities, that are actual priorities that you as individuals have identified as priorities to be gotten to, we shouldn't have all these consent bills. We have 5 hours worth of consent bills ahead of any other priority bills. Now we can reorder the agenda. That's fine by me. But I'm going to continue taking time. Now, the fact that I'm reading about the rules is because we didn't follow our own rules. That's why I'm talking about the rules specifically today. I was always intending to take time today. Time is the only tool that I have. And so I'm going to use it. And you don't have to like what I'm doing, but I am following the rules. I am following the rules. And I'm going to follow the rules all day and probably in the days to come. Is there anyone in the queue?
Yes.
Is it? Okay, I will get in the queue so that others can talk if they'd like to.
Thanks, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Wayne, you recognize.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not going to take all my time, but I am going to respond. Just because I might be against giving $50 million to one project, and in that project, or one particular project, but also redevelopment of parks and trails, doesn't mean I'm against the military. In fact, the military's budget went up $10 billion last year, from $705 billion to $715 billion in 2022. 50 million from us, I think, is wrong. It isn't about whether you support the military or not. It's about the trails and the parks and the recreation continuing to be put over the people that I represent. And the fact of the matter is, we can talk about ARPA, but ARPA is the federal government giving us money. The state has yet to invest the same from the extra money we've gotten and received this year, which is what the cash transfers represent. Let's be clear. Overall, cash transfers represent us moving money out of cash to getting down to 1.3 billion in the cash reserves to make it okay, because we don't want to have more in cash reserves because it triggers other things such as property tax relief, and it just is probably not sound to have 1.5 billion. I don't even think it's sound to have 1.3 billion in cash reserves. So it's really buying down the cash reserves, and where we're buying it down says what's important to us. And what's important to the Budget Committee, as I see, are trails, water, recreational, supplanting irrigation districts, who, by the way, have their own taxing authority, over people who have been left behind year after year by this body. Yes, I have a problem with that. And I'm not going to apologize to the public transit drivers out of Omaha if I'm taking time to talk about it, partly because they are driving many of the people that I'm talking about. Partly their job is based on many of the people I talk about. Partly because 3 years ago, I overrode the governor to make sure we have a better public transportation system. So it's not about that. But I'm not going to stand up here and be like, okay, there are projects for people in the military. No, Willow Lakes is played by people like me because I played there. And it's a nice golf course. And the trails that are around there, I've walked there, rode my bike around there. Those are fairly nice. But tell me, where else are we going to put $30 million in parks and golf courses that we're going to be okay with? Because that's what it says. And the Base Lake, by the way, there was a contract already bid out on the Base Lake to redo the whole thing last year, because I've seen it on my computer and I didn't bid on it. So the Base Lake is already getting upgraded, and that overall project is already paid for. So what are we actually doing? Oh, talk about offered housing. Guess what? The government made a decision in the 80s to privatize their housing. And go read the papers on offered housing. There was problems not being kept up because the government decided to privatize their own housing. And now the state is going to help supplement that? I'm not okay with that. And I'm going to spend time talking about that. And I'm going to spend time finding examples. And I'm going to file amendments on the budget. I just got up to talk about Juneteenth. And while I was up, I mentioned the budget because I had to mention the budget because it bothers me. But to say that it's just about the military and those serve our country, absolutely. Absolutely. And there are people in the military that I represent in my district who are wanting better things in their district, that don't necessarily live on base, but drive there every day and have to drive through areas of parts of town that are stricken with poverty that we continue not to invest in.
1 minute.
But by the way, they're looking at prisons in these communities. They're looking at expanding beds in these communities, and we're going to pay for that too. To all my conservatives are saying, what about the broken home? Go read the article. 20% of African-American males in certain census tracts are being sentenced. There's your broken family. Over-policed, overcharged. And if you look at the disparity of the same crimes, yes, African-American males are getting sentenced harder and longer. If our budget is a moral document, I got to question what our morals are. That's why I call it a beautiful lie. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Wayne. Before proceeding, Senator Pauls would like us to recognize 75 fourth graders from Willowdale Elementary School in Omaha, Nebraska. Those guests are with us in the North Balcony. Students, please rise. We can welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh.
Thank you. How much time is left?
5 minutes 30.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to just speak to some of what Senator Wayne was just saying, because this morning when I was reading through the Appropriations Committee budget proposal, I don't know, Senator Wayne, if you have it handy on page 11 under the Military Base Development Fund, I did notice, and I don't disagree with making the facilities nicer, but I did notice that there is $5 million to fund a documentary about Offutt Air Force Base. I thought that's a very large budget for a documentary. I mean, like a very large budget. I have a lot of family members who work in film, and a lot of movies don't cost $5 million to make, let alone a documentary. So that is one part that I would be concerned about. So I just wanted to mention that. And then getting back to the rules. So, and I'm the only one left in the queue. Okay. So I know that this is not comfortable for the body, and I don't know. I guess maybe it is my intention to make it uncomfortable for the body. There's not really been anybody in here who has been diligent about making sure that we are honoring our rules, following our rules, and then also holding us accountable by taking time. Taking time is hard to do. It's not hard to talk about things. Well, sometimes it is, but it's hard to do because you're upsetting people. You're upsetting people that you like. You're upsetting people that you work with on things. And that's really, really hard. It is challenging for me to do this. I had to spend several days thinking about it before I even put in motions and whether or not I should do it. And are people going to be angry? Yes, they are. But is it important? Yes, it is. So it's not something that I did on some sort of whim. It was very deliberative. And I don't want people to not have their day with their bills, but we have priorities. And we, as individual senators, designated what those are. And we are putting other things ahead of our priorities. We are prioritizing something else other than our priorities. And if we're okay with doing that, then we should be okay with taking the time to do it. And if we're not okay with doing that, then we should change how we're doing things. I'm not okay with doing it. But I'm going to take the time to do it because that appears to be what the body has consented to, that we are okay with taking the time to go through these bills before we get to our priority bills. So if you're okay with that, then I'm going to do it. And if you're not okay with it, then let's talk about changing how we're doing things. I don't have anything else I can do. All I can do is take time. So, how much time?
You have 128.
128? Okay.
There's a few seconds after that for the vote.
Okay. And I think he walked away. Senator Breezy, do you want any time to talk? Okay. So scheduling of bills and priority bills. Okay, this is still Rule 5, Section 5. I think I got through Section 4. Yes, I did, because we ended with statement of intent. Okay, Rule 5, Section 5, scheduling of priority bills, priority bills.
1 minute.
Thank you. Each senator may designate one bill as a priority bill. Such priority bill need not be the designator's bill, but the principal introducer must concur with the designation as a priority bill and with the withdrawal of the designation once made. I'm going to stop on that now because I know we'll go to other, well, I can come back to it. I don't want to be. So I will withdraw floor amendment 102 and yield the remainder of my time.
Thanks, Senator. FA 102 has been withdrawn. Senator Breezy waived the option to close. Question for the body the adoption of the committee amendment, AM 1894. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted? Carry two. Record, please.
39 ayes, no nays on adoption of committee amendments.
AM 1894 has been adopted. The question for the body advance of LB 1204 to ENR initial. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted? Carry two. Record, please.
36 ayes, no nays, Mr. President, on the advancement of the bill.
LB 1204 advances. Items of record, please.
Mr. President, the Appropriations Committee reports 977 and 1163 to general file with amendments. Amendments to be printed, Senator Hilgers 1023, Senator McKinney 1011. Appropriations will have an executive session at noon in room 1524, at 12:30, excuse me. Appropriations 12:30, 1524. Business and Labor Committee will have an executive session tomorrow, Tuesday, March 15 at noon. Name ads, Senator Sanders, 779, Blood, 829, 851, 853, 856. Senator Ben Hansen would move to recess the body until 1:30.
Members heard the motion to recess to 1:30. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. We are in recess to 1:30.